I'll get a knock. Hello and welcome everyone to the second episode of Barca Page Charcha. We've just come off the Champions League game, the first game of the season against Bayern Munich, the rivals who generally tend to beat us. And things didn't quite go the way we thought they would, although we did avoid a catastrophe that was the last time we played them. The match ended 3-0 in the favor of Bayern with Thomas Muller with a goal and Robert Lewandowski with two. The match was to an extent had a Barcelona which was largely handicapped without Usman Dembele and Fati, Jordi Alba facing a fever when he came into the match. So Dest out injured, Luke De Jong starting his first game against Bayern Munich, and yeah, things quite didn't quite go the way they were. Largely, we were dominated throughout the game, and once Bayern scored, I think that opened the trapdoors to the rest of the goals which were coming. In terms of the game, no one would really say that the fans were really happy about things. We got Sergio Roberto who was booed at the end of it. We had Ronald Koeman who had a lot of pressure on him. We have Joan Laporta facing the critics and released a video saying, "Please continue supporting us. Things will get better." That's where the club is at right now. And this game, to an extent, summarizes how the transition has started for Barcelona. Now that Lionel Messi has left. So Siddharth, very a weird match as a Barcelona fan, where you see a front two of Memphis Depay and Luke De Jong, where you see Barca largely defending the whole match, ending up with 47% possession, trying to just manage the game, something we are not used to Barca doing. Your views on the game?
Yeah, hi Aditya. So, uh, the initial views, like seeing the first half was like utter like desperation because I think this match was in some ways harder to watch than the 8-2 because in the 8-2 at least we knew it was going to happen. We kind of also like had players we knew who could turn it around, and that was a tumultuous year. But this year, I mean, there's nothing to look forward to. It's almost like when it was really men against boys, and we didn't have a player like of the quality of Leo Messi who could turn the game for Barcelona. So yeah, it was really bad to watch. In the second half, I guess there were some positives with the La Masia boys coming on and performing well, but yeah, like to put it into words, it will be like doesn't look good. Doesn't look good.
Yeah, like a Barcelona game, hard to watch is probably one of the worst things you can say about a Barcelona game. I think it's very rare that we've seen games where we never had hope and we never looked like we were going to score. We ended up with no shots on targets in the whole game. The first time in Barcelona history, apparently. So, काफी sad scene तो था. But yeah, even I felt the same. I think losing hope in the match, we didn't expect to exactly like beat Bayern 3-0, but at least we expected कि चलो कुछ तो effort मारेंगे goal पे, and that really didn't happen. I think the most of the match we were to an extent saved to an extent by Araujo and Ter Stegen who pulled off some like really good saves. But I think Bayern from the start to an extent pressing us all the time. We had no people up front. I think that's also a huge negative in terms of Barcelona not having people up front. No one was making run going forward. I think De Jong was the only one who was making a run in the whole match. I think काफी काफी weird game to watch. Any your views on the tactics Ronald Koeman used in terms of playing five at the back? Like your views on it in terms of how do you think was it the right strategy before coming into the game?
I think the five at the back could have worked with the right personnel up front and also in the back line. I think Sergio Roberto as a back five is not going to give you any pace, any width. And when you have Luke De Jong, I mean, I haven't seen anybody slower than him. In my whole time of watching football, I really haven't seen anybody slower than him. So I think when you don't have any pace up front to go behind the lines and when you don't have the right personnel, I think a system like that is not gonna be attacking, and that showed like no zero shots on goal or zero shots on target. I mean, and yeah, I mean, with the right personnel, maybe with Serginho Dest, maybe with someone willing to run behind the lines, it might have worked. But against a team like Bayern who punish you, and when you're toothless up front, I think this was always coming.
हाँ like I mean to be really honest like first half में जब मैं देख रहा था like we did have times when let's say it was like on Bayern having only three players behind and let's say Memphis Depay with the ball or like Frankie De Jong with the ball लेकिन the कोई run ही नहीं ले रहा है left right से like Roberto couldn't go up down all the time Jordi Alba to an extent थोड़ा बहुत run मारा था but in general I think whenever we got the ball in a good position there was no one to make runs down the flank I think that's to an extent where the game was. I mean, we could have scored if you ask me. Like we had a couple of opportunities where let's say 3v3 था और लियो होता तो maybe मार देता वो but like Luke De Jong like I swear उसने कितने runs किए पूरे गेम में जो actually like Frankie De Jong or like Pedri found him like I don't remember a single run which he made like uh, any thoughts on Luke De Jong's first game other than the fact that he's very slow in terms of hold up ability yeah also.
I don't think there's really much to talk about. I mean, Koeman did talk about him like being better in the air and like him being more effective than Neymar or something like that. But I think you need people to actually have give crosses for that. And I don't really remember him winning any important header. And hold up play also like nothing comes to my mind. So yeah, really bad debut. I haven't like this was as bad a debut as it could get really. I mean, he could have scored a couple of own goals and only that could have made it worse. But yeah, uh, nothing of note. And if he's going to be our main striker up front, then God help us.
uh, but like even to an extent Memphis Depay like Depay what I noticed in the whole game was Depay was not a forward he was largely playing near the center line उसको वहाँ पे ball मिल रही है he's trying to turn and give it to someone but even if he manages to turn which he did दो तीन बार uh, he really didn't have anyone to make other than let's say Jordi Alba or like Frankie De Jong. I think Memphis Depay did try his best, but thoughts on like in general in terms of attack, who do you think was most impressive uh, for Barca?
I think in the starting attack, Memphis did try his best. And yeah, I won't speak of Luke De Jong again. But even with the changes, I mean, Demir came on. He looked better than Luke De Jong, but I guess the third goal was pretty much his fault. So I think the only person who looked a bit between his teeth in the attack was, I guess, Balde. I mean, after coming on, he did make a few runs, and that was the only time Barca looked a bit threatening. So yeah, I guess from an attacking point of view, I'll have to say left back. That's our situation right now.
यार मुझे तो यही मेरी समझता हूँ रोनाल्ड कोमन के लिए उसको पता लुक डे जोंग पहला मैच खेला है वो लामासिया ग्रेजुएट तो है नहीं उसको टिकट टाका तो होने वाली है नहीं और डाल दिया बायर्न म्यूनिख के अगेंस्ट व्हेन यू हैड लाइक यू कुड हैव प्लेड रिकी पूच दे कुड हैव प्लेड यूसुफ डेमीर देयर मतलब किसी को भी खिला देते उसके अलावा बट नहीं मतलब बट आई थिंक one thing which at least to an extent gave me some solace was at the end of it he 60 minutes पे youngsters को लाया and I think Gavi for that matter like youngsters and Balde like brought in so much energy like मतलब at least after 60 minutes at least I was like चलो maybe हम एक गोल मार लेंगे but अब पूछने की बात ये है कि शुरू ही तुमने वैसे क्यों नहीं किया like why did you have to play Alba when he had a fever and he was not well I think very very weird tactics and un-Barcelona like I think that was the biggest problem ना मतलब we are used to कि हम लोग मारेंगे गोल मारेंगे पांच छह एक अच्छा फुटबॉल खेलेंगे but this was like defensive lineup and क्या ही बोले just the final thing before we move on how do you think the midfield was in terms of Barcelona like we did have three really good midfielders like our usual three but do you think we got dominated there या midfield ठीक था
I think midfield is the only department where we can say we have three world-class midfielders, and people on the bench are pretty good too. But I think under the tactics of Koeman, I think we talked about this that Pedri under Luis Enrique and Pedri under Koeman is pretty different. And I think maybe it's because of the non-mobile front attack also. But yeah, I won't say we got run around in the midfield, but again, they couldn't really do much at the end of the day with what we
हाँ
had going
लोग
forward.
आई थिंक मेनी टाइम्स फ्रैंकी डे के पास बॉल थी वो आगे भाग रहा है वो लोगों को ढूंढ रहा है कोई मिल नहीं रहा है पास करने के लिए सो या आई कांट रियली से मतलब आई थिंक in terms of dealing with the pressure in the midfield we were not the worst like we didn't like continuously lose the ball like we didn't need to like उतनी बुरी लेवल पे मिडफील्ड बेकार नहीं थी बट अब बॉल होते हुए भी हमने क्या ही कर लिया आई थिंक दैट इज बिगेस्ट प्रॉब्लम moving on to the next part so let's talk about positives and negatives so the major negatives from this game other than Luke De Jong जो हम लोग को आता है like give me two or three of them
I think definitely tactics. I mean, with the tactics that we went into the game and how they played out and how nothing was changed actually. Even after being dominated in the first half, nothing really changed in the second half. So, I mean, lack of tactics or lack of tactics, that's I think the major issue. Secondly, I'd say the attack. I mean, we cannot really go into this season seriously with that attack. I mean, something really has to change there. And I think it'll come down to if Koeman can actually pick a team that goes out there to win, and definitely mentality also. I mean, I read reports that Roberto after the game was crying because whatever the booing, but seriously, I mean, you're a professional footballer, you should expect that. And I mean, we've had stories in the past about Jordi Alba crying in the during the middle of the game against Liverpool, and I think mentality also has come to play. I mean, we are under Valverde, we were mentally probably the weakest top side in Europe, and we thought it got better under Koeman, but the results aren't showing it.
हाँ I mean, no one really likes let's say एक प्लेयर से ड्रेसिंग रूम में आके रोल तो किसी को पसंद नहीं है वो बट एट दैट पॉइंट इन टाइम यार तुम क्या एक्सपेक्ट करते हो फैंस की हम लोग देखेंगे अगर कुछ अटैक नहीं कर रहे हैं डिफेंसिव खेल रहे हैं मतलब क्या एक्सपेक्ट करते हो मतलब कुछ रिएक्शन नहीं करेंगे एंड इन जनरल मतलब बार्सिलोना क्राउड्स आर यूजुअली प्रीटी मेलो लाइक दे स्टैंड बिहाइंड द टीम कंपेयर टू लेट्स से रियल मैड्रिड देख लो मतलब एंचेलोटी को बू कर रहे थे वो लोग after he won them the Champions League just because he went a season without winning much. Normally Barcelona crowd is behind you, but when तुम tactics ही ऐसे करोगे कि मतलब तुम्हें अच्छा फुटबॉल ही नहीं खेलना है, तब I think the fans kind of lose you. And I think number of fans were also less, right? There, I think you could only sell around 70% of the allotted capacity. So yeah, even with that, the lack of support is थोड़ा appalling. But yeah, I think you're right in terms of tactics तो एक बड़ी problem है. Like in terms of मतलब अटैकिंग खेलना चाहिए मतलब अगर चलो गोल खा रहे हो तो खा लो लेकिन ठीक है एटलीस्ट एक दो मार दो सही मतलब other than that yeah I think attack again मतलब क्या ही बोले like I mean I think things will improve भी Dembele आएगा Ansu Fati आएगा Aguero आएगा I think Braithwaite was injured like this is the first time in life where I actually miss Martin Braithwaite like didn't you? Like, मुझे लगा नहीं था ये बोलने को मिलेगा कभी yeah you think if Braithwaite was there things would have been better
I think he, if Bradford was there, I think he might have gotten to one ball that I do remember. But yeah,
क्या
I
दिन
think I'll definitely take Martin Bradford like every time over Luke De Jong.
यू नो बार्सिलोना बहुत ज्यादा गिर चुकी है तुम बोल रहे हो कि मार्टिन ब्रैथवेट रहता तो बस जीत जाते हैं okay so yeah positives from the game I think I can start with that like youngsters especially Gavi and Balde I think Gavi 20 मिनट खेला 20 मिनट में उनकी पूरी टीम पे एक फेक फाउल किया होगा एंड येलो खाया येलो खाने के बाद भी वो नहीं हुआ मतलब इतना एंथुजियाज्म एट 60 मिनट्स कभी बार्सिलोना में इतना सडन चेंज इन एंथुजियाज्म कभी देखा ही नहीं मैंने like thoughts on Gavi and Balde and to an extent David
Yeah, Gavi and Balde like really played well. I mean, they showed that they actually care for the club and actually care for being on the pitch and wearing that shirt. I mean, as you said, Gavi was like a pit bull running behind every ball, like actually fighting. And even after he got
outstanding
the even after he got the yellow card, the crowd was cheering for him because I think for the first time in the game, somebody actually showed desire to win the ball, showed desire to actually compete with them. And Balde, as I said, I mean, he looked the most threatening player of all. So again, one more positive that I found was the Ronald Araujo, man. I mean, that guy really came
Yeah,
out as a leader after the game.
absolute shout
Yeah,
out to Rahul. Like
yeah,
the
brilliant.
number of times he stopped like front three, like Lewandowski को जो पकड़ के रखा वो Gnabry को जो पकड़ के रखा, like pretty impressive from Araujo. I mean, he was one of those people ना कि normally क्या होता है कि पीके रहता है तो हमें डर रहता है कि वन ऑन वन में तो ये हार जाएगा. अराउहो के होते हुए मुझे डर नहीं रहता भाई, मतलब जैसे कभी वन ऑन वन में कभी हारता ही नहीं है, मतलब ही इज फिजिकली स्ट्रांग, ही इज पेसी एंड पोजीशनिंग well, like he's brilliant in that as well. So yeah, I think another positive. Not Eric Garcia, not a positive for you. Largely, first goal to an extent was his fault. How did you find Garcia in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, first goal was in a way, yeah, his fault. I mean, he should be braver than that at that level. And yeah, I think he didn't have a really bad game apart from that. I mean, it was a whole back line that was not that functional. But as an individual, apart from the goal, I don't really remember him making much mistakes. But yeah, not that great a game after, if you take into account the mistake for the first goal.
Yeah, I think मुझे भी वही लग रहा था, like Araujo was like दिख रहा था उसका impact. Eric Garcia maybe less so. Anyway, we covered the positives and well, there are lots of negatives. Let's talk about players now. Like two players who impressed you the most and two players who didn't.
So the two players who impressed me the most, I think number one would be Araujo, uh, purely because he really stopped it being something like 5-0 or 6-0, and really after this game, I can actually look at him like a leader at the back. Maybe it was between him and Garcia before that, but right now I think it's pretty clear. It's any if there's any leader between them at this point of time, it's Araujo. The second would be it's a tough choice between Gavi and Balde, but I'll give it to Balde because I think his runs were the only time I thought during the match that we could score. So I think those would be the two positive players for me. The two negative players, I think, pretty easy choice. Number one would be Luke De Jong. I mean, he does not really deserve to play for Barcelona, and I mean, it's not his fault that he's been called there. He's a
Dutch
professional.
quota भाई, Dutch quota, Dutch को चाहिए.
Yeah, so obviously it's nothing on
दयाोंग
him.
दिखे ले लो.
It's nothing on him, but yeah, not at the level. And the other person would be Roberto. I mean, he's not that bad a player, but I don't really think he has anything special to be in the side. So yeah, those would be mine.
I think I have similar. I'll probably shout out two different players who I felt like had an incredible impact. Araujo, of course, is there, but other than that, I'd say number one, Gavi, purely because of the energy he brought. Like at least the match देखने में मजा आ रहा था. I think that's one thing, and I like it when Bayern players are getting kicked left, right, and center. ऐसा एक तो कोई तो चाहिए, and that was who was my first. I think another player who's kind of not been noticed a lot because who had a brilliant game for Barcelona was Marc-Andre Ter Stegen. I think Ter Stegen was pretty impressive. तो वैसे सेव तो काफी अच्छे किए, दो तीन पोजीशनिंग भी काफी सही. He didn't make those mistakes कि like जो 8-2 में किए थे कि like गलत पास कर रहा था, और like I think Ter Stegen deserves to be shouted out on a day in which most defenders didn't really do that well, other than let's say Araujo. Thoughts on Ter Stegen? He's back, isn't he? Compared to the lowdown in form he had in March.
Yeah, none of the goals were his fault really, and yeah, he had a good game. He did, as you said, the 8-1. I mean, his passing was all over the place, and I think yeah, this game he was much calmer, and yeah, it will take him some time probably to get back after the injury, but I think we do have a good goalkeeper in him, so I think that's one area we don't really need to worry.
Uh, yeah, like standout players largely fine. Gavi, Balde, Araujo, Ter Stegen to an extent. Yeah. So moving on to the next most teeny topic of discussion, which has to be extent been largely in the news because of Laporta and his meetings to an extent. Ronald Koeman, do you think he deserves to stay? And if you think he's going to stay, how long do you think he's going to last now?
I think, I mean, unfortunately, he's gonna probably stay. I mean, if they were to sack him, I mean, they won't have let him sign Luke de Jong in the first place. So I think they are gonna give him some time. But yeah, they really don't think he deserves to be there. I mean, it's been, it's not been like just like Valverde where the football was bad. I think there's a lots of things. I mean, his attitude towards players. I mean, and yeah, I really don't think he deserves to say, but I think he's gonna stay till the end of the group stage. I think that's my gut feeling at the moment.
As far as I understood, Abhi, people have not judged him. Like Laporta has not judged him very badly because like many players were injured. I think that's the only reason you can probably give Ronald Koeman. Like even if players are injured, at least ढंग से खिलाओ ना मतलब ऐसे ये क्या है पीछे बैक थ्री खिला रहे हो सबको डिफेंस पे रख रहे हो लुक डेओंग को आगे खिला रहे हो जस्ट बिकॉज डच है आई थिंक कोमन के फंडे थोड़े नहीं हुए मतलब द वे ही जजेस प्लेयर लेकिन कुछ को तो खिलाना नहीं है मतलब लुक डेओंग को खिला रहा है जिसने कुछ नहीं किया and just watch I'm fairly certain Luke de Jong is going to start the next match against Granada as well because Koeman does not give a damn about how a person has performed suppose उसने समझ लिया कि ये मेरा साइनिंग है तो उसको खिलाऊंगा मेम्फिस डिपाई को खिलाएगा फ्रैंकी डे को खिलाएगा लुक डे को खिलाएगा तो yeah, I am personally very pissed off at Koeman. I think he should not have continued in the summer itself. But हाँ, like, और कोई है नहीं. Ten Hag maybe right now. Javi, of course. But I think Koeman was like really frustrating, and it's not just about that. यार मतलब एक तो कि चलो ठीक है मैच हारे हो ले अपोलोजाइज करो ना प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में आके कोमन बंदा ये बोलता है कि हमारे प्लेयर्स नहीं थे और लाइक थिंग्स आर नॉट एज बैड एज दे वर बिफोर लाइक वी वुड हैव डन मच बेटर फिर बोलता है कि लुक डेओंग का पहला गेम था इसलिए उसको ज्यादा जज नहीं करते हैं तो भाई तू खिला क्यों रहा है मतलब it doesn't make any sense to me. How do you think do you think Koeman's what he's saying after the game has any merit whatsoever? Like I know I can excuse him कि चलो players come there, but yeah, excuses देना like what do you think about it?
I think it's been like continuing the trend from Valverde. I mean, speaking something in the press conference, and we all know what happens. So the press conference, I mean, it's just to put up a face, and yeah, his comments aren't really that great considering the situation and like his like जो उसने पहले बोला था the club has a future because of me. I mean,
It
that's
should be.
such a stupid comment. I mean, come on. Yeah, I
मतलब
mean, what
ये
else do we expect from a guy? I mean, who got kicked out of Valencia, who got kicked out of Everton? I mean, really, he shouldn't have been in this job at the first place. But now that he's here, I mean, he should leave as soon as possible.
हाँ मतलब यार एक तो ठीक है तुम बोल रहे हो चलो तुमने चांसेस दिए भाई अगर तू बोल रहे कि फ्यूचर है तेरी वजह से तो भाई फ्यूचर को खिलाता क्यों नहीं है स्टार्ट से लुक डेओ को भी खिला रहा है अलग ही इंसान है like Koeman was like really frustrating the way things are. But yeah, enough like, negatives. Let's be pragmatic and see what Barcelona need to change in the next game. So I'll start on this. Number one, Luke De Jong को निकालो. Put Yusuf Demir in. Put anyone else in, but put two attackers in somehow. Like I don't care. तुम B team से डाल रहे हो कहाँ से डाल रहे हो but don't play Luke De Jong as a forward. Like अंशु फाटी को लेकर आ जाओ खिला लो but Luke De Jong नहीं चलेगा. I think that's the number one thing. Pedri is out injured, so Alba is out injured. Dest could probably be back, but in the next game, who do you see replacing Pedri? Like I think Alba को तो Balde replace करेगा, but who do you think will replace Pedri now?
I think it most probably will be Gavi. I mean, but personally, I would have preferred maybe Ricky Pooch. And as you said, Balde, Alba को replace करेगा. Don't be so sure about it. I mean,
Koeman
for
बोल
all we know, we might put Lengle or whatever.
सर्जी
Yeah,
रोबोटो को डाल देगा भाई लेफ्ट
yeah,
विंग
Lengle
कैन
को भी
प्ले
डाल
एनीवेयर
सकता है भाई. So yeah, let's hope that he plays proper players at their proper positions. But yeah, I mean the attack definitely needs to up the game. I mean, if we are to have any, I mean, Granada is not that a great a team, but at this point of time, I mean,
confidence low.
and yeah, confidence is solo. And after seeing this week's Champions League, I mean, and I felt like any team could beat Barcelona. So yeah, not great time. So let's hope we get a win.
Uh, I think Gavi will start. I think knowing Koeman, he'll probably start Nico. So पता नहीं like what will happen. But it'll be fun to see if Gavi starts क्योंकि like mostly हमने तो उसको अभी तक यही देखा है, bench appearance देखा है. I think Gavi starting would be a wonderful thing just for the energy he brings in. And yeah, you think Balde will play the full game? Like he has never played a complete game for Barca. Like, you think he'll start and play the whole time, or you think that would that not be wise? Like, what would you do if you were a coach? Full game.
I mean, if he does start the game, I mean, if his performance and his fitness level are up to that, he should be playing the full game. But probably, if we are winning, and frankly, even if we are losing, Koeman would probably replace him with Roberto or somebody like that.
वो बात तो सही है. But attack में, I mean, we don't have say plenty of options. ना, the Memphis Depay है एक, चलो यूसुफ डेमीर है दो, चलो लुक डेयोंग है तीन, और अटैक में है ही नहीं मतलब. So क्या करोगे at that point in time? Who would you kick out from the defense would be the biggest question. So if you are playing three, you know the big three like Garcia, PK, Araujo. If you go back to a back four, so we have let's say Balde on the left, Dest on the right, hopefully, or knowing Koeman, Roberto, who do you kick out of the front three, of the back three?
Uh,
Difficult one, isn't it?
yeah, it is. I mean, Roberto really shouldn't be playing there. I mean, if we have
हाँ लेकिन यार
this
सेंटर बैक हटाना है ना. डेस्ट को लाएंगे चलो, बट सेंटर बैक में किसको हटाना?
PK probably at his age, I don't think we expect him to be playing 90 minutes. I mean, 3 4 days apart. So yeah, probably PK. But I don't think PK will be benched. To be frank.
Not after what he's done and kind of the
Uh,
leadership
yeah,
he apparently brings. Uh,
yeah. I think
yeah,
Garcia would make way. I mean, just going by the form.
yeah, just going by the form, probably Garcia. But yeah, I'd love to see a Garcia Araujo back to like positioning भी सही है, aerial ability भी सही है. But yeah, I think next match is going to be the real test for Koeman. मतलब ऐसे ये मैच हारे तो ठीक है, चलो बोल सकते कि बायर्न म्यूनिक थी वो सबको ठोकती है 3-0 4-0. अगले मैच में अगर बार्सिलोना ने ऐसी गेम खेली, I see Ronald Koeman out in 3 weeks if that happens in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, let's see what happens. Let's just end it with just one last thing. Messi played his first game for Paris Saint-Germain. Didn't have possibly the greatest game. They drew against Club Brugge. Uh, how do you feel about Messi's first game? If you watched it, like impressive, we'll see, or like how do you feel about it? Him starting a Champions League game and finishing.
Yeah, so it was his first start, not his first game.
Start, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, start.
Yeah, I watched the first half of that game and it was frankly pretty boring. I mean, PSG didn't really create much chances and Messi did get into those spaces. But yeah, it was weird seeing him in a different jersey. But I think the performance, what people expected of PSG with that team and how they actually did, I mean, they were miles apart. So, I mean, we'll have to see if with those superstars, PSG can actually do something or they'll end up being like Barca. I mean, let's see.
I think of all the big guns like Manchester United, PSG, or even say the Real Madrid to an extent, I think only Manchester City have run a little bit to their buck. So देखते हैं like with Chelsea winning the Champions League last season, अभी भी hope रखता हूँ मैं थोड़ा कि कैसे तो कुछ तो कर लेंगे. But yeah, anyway, I think that's it for this episode. It's been great talking and to you again, Siddharth. Frustration निकालने के लिए काफी useful. So yeah, see you again. All right, bye Siddharth. Bye everyone.